Welcome to MELfeed.video. We are commencing a live web stream service via youtube.com from Echuca, Australia. We currently conduct these streams on Monday evenings, with other times to be added as more opportunities arise. Please visit our website MELfeed.video for further information. This web video project presents old and new community TV programs. Please enjoy your stay with MELfeed.video.
Welcome to NAT Chat. I'm Paul Spanos, and our guest again this week is Kay Harrison, a singer and a songwriter. Kay, welcome back.
Thank you.
When was the first time that you did write a song?
I've been writing since I was a tiny girl, so I always had a need to express myself on paper. I wrote poetry, I wrote thoughts. I was very, very good at English in school, so I used to get pretty good marks for my poems. But as I grew older, I began to write secular music because I was in the secular music scene at the time. And in fact, I had a measure of success. I wrote some music that was bought by Channel 10 and was used for quite a few years. And the royalties that I received from the sale of those songs have enabled me to do the albums that I've done for the Lord today.
And in other words, this is another, it's a language for you, expressing what you believe. And
that's right. But what I used to write about, it's changed. Obviously, when I became a Christian, what changed for me was my entire life. What was important to me, there was a major shift.
All right.
And so, you know, I don't think it's just about writing, but it's about what I felt was worth writing about. And I found something in Jesus that I couldn't put a lid on that. I had a compulsion to write about my faith and also about the experiences that I observed other people having as well.
Returning to the subject of persecution, it is not an easy subject to deal with. One sad story after the other. And it is difficult to keep yourself into that mode. How do you motivate yourself?
Well, the simple answer is that I don't motivate myself. I think I'm definitely inspired and spurred on by the courage that I see in the people who love Jesus Christ and who take these really tough stands. I also know without a doubt that it's God working in me. If God gives you a job, I really believe He will also enable you to actually do it, to do the job. And it is a job in one sense, but it's more than that for me. It's a call. And in the last couple of lines of my song, Hidden in Jesus, there's a couple of lines there that says, I'm drawn to His suffering. I'm drawn by His will. So for me, it is a drawing, and I want to make use of everything that I've gone through in my life for the glory of God. Really, that's what I believe my life is about.
Are you talking about drawn to His suffering, talking about Christ Himself?
That's right, absolutely, because when I see a suffering Christian who's suffering specifically because they will not recant their faith in Jesus Christ, I see the sufferings of my Lord. I can't separate the two for me. I see that they are suffering because they love Him. He suffered because He loves us. So there's that relationship.
This faith empowers you, in other words, and you keep going into this subject.
Absolutely, and I can tell you now that, look, I'm a grandmother, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I am no different to any other human being. When I see suffering, of course, it's terrible, and at a human level, I can get very overwhelmed, very overwhelmed. But I come back to why. Why are they suffering? I come back to the purpose of their pain, and the purpose of their pain is Jesus Christ. And He considered us worth dying for. They consider Him worth dying for. So that spurs me on, and I think that injects into me a renewed strength every time I feel my courage failing me.
The numbers of Christians persecuted every year is staggering. Exceed 150,000. So, talking about this, do people listen to that message?
Do people listen? I actually think.
Do they listen to about the persecuted?
I don't think too many people even know about the persecuted, Paul. And I say that I'm not talking about people outside the church. I'm talking about even Christians. Many churches and many Christians are very ignorant about the suffering of their own people. Now, it may be lack of information, lack of knowledge, but in some cases, it's been my experience, it's also been lack of desire and lack of desire to actually know what is really going on. And, you know, we know right now as we sit here, Syria has become a slaughter yard for minority groups, more specifically Christians, who are being murdered. And they're being murdered by the dozens a day in Syria right now. We have a sister that's awaiting a death sentence in Sudan. She's pregnant, 8 months pregnant. She's been sentenced to death because she will not recant her faith in Christ. She is due to be hung in a few weeks' time.
Okay.
These are just examples now, and you know I could go on. They're just simple examples.
Having the job and carrying that burden in you, what sort of connection between your singing and their suffering? In what I'm saying, what do they get from your singing?
I think
those who suffer. I'm talking about the persecuted.
Yes, for the persecuted themselves, because obviously I'm writing the songs from different perspectives. Some are from the perspective of myself as I look at them. Okay. Some are from their perspective. Right. And some of the songs have been written as messages from the suffering church to the world, to the free world, and to Christians who live in the West.
Okay.
So some of them are from the Lord himself, which are taken from the Word. But what is it doing for them? I think the primary thing that it communicates to them, and this is what's come back to me from Pakistan, is that somebody cared enough, that somebody was moved and touched enough by their suffering, and has the love of God in their hearts, and it's only by God's grace that I do, that they wanted to actually use all their resources to make their suffering known, and not just to make their suffering known, but to make their suffering known in a way that people will understand why they're suffering.
It means that you're singing, and the subject that you deal with, to their ears, is a comforting.
I think it is, based on what has come back to me. Our direct ministry to Pakistan, we receive many emails, and I get phone calls from Pakistan on a regular basis from the pastor that I'm connected with directly. And they are deeply moved and deeply encouraged by the fact that not only is this album raising funds, money that goes directly to them and helps them in so many ways, but that somebody cares, somebody loves them, someone who's never even met them. That's the work of God. This is the way God's body works.
And if you, because obviously you have a communication with them.
Absolutely.
A question comes to my mind is, what if you ask them what they want to say to a person like me in Australia who doesn't know anything about persecution, and I don't even feel it, to be honest. What do you think they're saying? They want, if I ask him, what they're going to say to me?
Well, you know what's really interesting about the people I deal with in Pakistan, none of them complain about the persecution. I've never heard one word of complaint. All I've heard from them is, sister, please pray for us, that God will sustain us so that we can be faithful to him. And I think their message to us here in the West is, stand up for him, because if you do not stand up for him and stand up for your faith, you will fall for everything. Okay. They stand up, and they actually seal that with their lives in many instances. The martyr's heart is there, and whether you die for Jesus or not, you must live for him. But there always must be in the heart of a martyr, and that's what we see, the willingness to lay down one's life, if that's asked of you.
By the sounds of it, I can't see in your answer any political motivation message. Do you think this is the same as in the first century, because the persecution pretty much is...
The Christian church is just bathed in the blood of the saints and of the martyrs, of those who stood. We're starting from Jesus himself, you know, through to Stephen, of course. John the Baptist was beheaded. Anybody who stood for truth and made no compromise were cut down. And that has not changed, except that we're seeing more dying for their faith in Jesus today than at ever any other time in history.
Thank you, Kay. We'll be back shortly after the break. Continue the interview with Kay Harrison.
If you were living on the streets, wouldn't you want more than just your best friend to keep you safe and warm? Donate to Backpack Bed for Homeless and give warm, waterproof protection and dignity tonight. Call 1300 OzHelp.
Welcome back to NAT Chat. I'm Paul Spanos, and we'll continue the interview with Kay Harrison to the topic of persecution. Kay, welcome back.
Thank you.
You have the album here. Is that now your major source of income or part of your job today?
No. No, the albums, in fact, this is my second album, my first album out of Egypt as well. It's still selling after all these years. And all the proceeds, all the profits from both of these albums, more specifically Church Under Fire, goes directly to the work of the persecuted church in Pakistan. Voice of the Martyrs Australia also sell this album on their website.
Okay.
And whatever they actually receive for that, they put into different projects worldwide. So I don't make a living out of this.
Okay,
no,
we're going to talk about the ministry in a minute. Then how do you make a living?
Well, I work during the day. I do quite a few what we call interactive singing groups. I facilitate singing groups for aged care persons in different facilities around Melbourne. I work for the RSL. They have a lot of nursing homes, returned soldiers and nurses from the Second World War. So I do quite a lot of work for VASI, RSL. I work also in the Jewish community as a private companion. I also do singing groups for a place in Melbourne called Monash, which is a lovely aged care facility for older Jewish people. And I've been involved in the Jewish community for well over a decade now. So
wow, you are into the community, all right?
Yes, and I guess, you know, you're talking about suffering and persecution. I've also had a heart, always had a heart for the Jewish people as a people. And it was always my desire at some point to work alongside the Jewish people and to show them the love that I always wanted to show them when I was a little girl, and I learned about what they'd gone through during Second World War. So now I say that I have some wonderful friends in that community as well, and I do quite a bit of work there.
Is your background Jewish?
No, not at all. No, but some of my best friends, closest friends from when I was very young are Jewish. I even named my second child after one of my closest Jewish friends.
There you go. What a connection. Talking about back to the ministry, can you give us some tangible examples? How those funds go there, what is happening to those? And
I think it's important for people to know that when we send money, my husband and I are both involved in this ministry, and it's a direct ministry to Pakistan. We send our money actually via Western Union. So it goes directly to the pastor and the pastoral team. And over the last few years in Pakistan, there have been many, many different types of persecution. And so many of our brothers and sisters have lost everything. They've lost everything, the blankets, food, medicines, household items that they desperately need, like fans. They also have little sort of containers called paities, where they have all of their most precious household items in. And they are usually fireproof, but they still get very damaged when a house is actually, burned to the ground. And so we've been able to replace many of those. But I've made a list actually, Paul, of some of the projects that we're actually involved in at the moment. The money at the moment is going toward helping the completion of a church building near the brick kilns, so that the poorest of God's people there can worship God in a building. We're building a school. We're actually probably 2/3 of a way through building a school for the poorest children, the brick kilns, and they're being educated, which is fantastic. Prosthetic limbs, because many of them have lost limbs as a result of all kinds of hardship there. Life-saving medicines, Bibles. Bibles are very hard to come by in many persecuted lands, and it's the number one thing that Christians cry out for. They want God's word. So we're able to provide that. We're able to educate the pastor's children. We're able to provide things like blankets, food, and of course all kinds of things that everyday, practical everyday things, as well as aiding them in their spiritual life. Although I have to say they've got far more to offer me than I do.
Do you see that a persecuted family, apart from the tangible things, they fall into different temptations than otherwise they wouldn't fall into? Sort of because of the financial needs that they've got. They might be prone into falling into temptation of getting involved with anything just to get something to go by?
That's not been my experience. I can only speak from my experience, and more specifically with the direct ministry that we have to Pakistan. These people have a devout trust that God will provide. And it just doesn't seem to matter what's taken from them. And I can tell you I have thousands and thousands of emails now, without exaggeration, in the 9 years. And they're just filled with thanksgiving to God. These emails are just filled with messages from suffering believers who want me to know and want us to know here in the West how grateful they are to God, that they have Jesus as their saviour, and that we care about them, and that we make communication with them, and that we're helping them. And I feel we're doing so little. I look at just the size of the issue of persecution. It's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than any of us. But I've got to do something. So I do what I can. I do what I can.
On an Aussie person, like an average Australian who hasn't been exposed into any of those stories other than listening here and there or television news, how that person can understand more or can feel more about those stories?
I think sometimes there is a tendency for people, perhaps, that, as you say, have not been exposed to this kind of violence for somebody's faith. They tend to fall into a category of thinking, oh, look, it's just a whole bunch of different groups all infighting. We'll just leave it all to them. It's not until you get to know people on an individual level, once you hear their individual stories, once you see their pain and their suffering. I've witnessed executions of brothers and sisters in Christ. I've actually seen that, live footage. When Peshawar was bombed in Pakistan last year, when that church was bombed, several dozen men, women and children were blown to bits, and the footage from that bombing was sent directly to me by believers who were there at the time, because they were having lunch together and they had their cameras and they were filming one another. So, and having actually been exposed to that, once you start to know the names and the faces of individuals, their stories become personal. They touch your humanity. It's no longer something happening out there that you look at on the 6 o'clock news, but these are real people with real stories and who are really suffering.
Now, the subject of suffering doesn't make you weaker, because by the sounds of it, you give me sort of a different message. How do you feel about this? Does it make you weaker or stronger at the end of the day?
Well, Paul,
for me to be exposed, do I have any motivation to know more? Is it going to make me feel depressed more than...
That's an interesting question, you know, and if I'm being really brazenly honest, I think there are a lot of people here in Australia, and I'll be talking to people right now as I say this, who suffer with anxiety, depression, all kinds of things. So I've been a lifelong sufferer of depression and anxiety, and I have some massive anxiety bouts at times. It may not look like that on the outside, but I do. So I can really empathise with people who suffer silently inside, have to work really hard to overcome that. But what I'm really getting at here is that the suffering of God's people that I've been exposed to over the years has had a twofold effect on me. There have been times when I felt I wanted to run as far as I could in the opposite direction, because what I've seen has been so horrifying. And even now, as I sit here, just 2 days ago, I witnessed the atrocities that are happening in Syria through some footage that was sent through. I didn't sleep all night. I cried for hours. I prayed. And just begged God to intervene on their behalf. So in that sense, it put the fear of God into me. I was afraid when I saw that. And I sit there on my bed and I ask myself, how would I respond in that situation? Would I still be able to love my enemies? Would I still be able to say I love my Lord, even though it seems like he's left me, he's abandoned me, he's forsaken me? But you know, it strengthened me, because I know, as I look at the Bible and as I read what God himself said, when Jesus was on this earth, he told us these things would happen. And seeing these things actually happening in the lives of people who love him that much, that they are willing, even though it's a terrible price to pay, they know, they are convinced that this is not it. They're convinced that they have a life that goes on beyond the grave. And you know, their suffering has changed my Christianity. I am not the Christian woman I would have been had I not been exposed to the persecuted church and that ministry. And I thank God for that.
But in that sense, I can see that has made you a stronger Christian in realistic sort of terms of all of that, what implies.
It's made me more tender, but it's made me stronger. So you have this kind of almost seeming paradox there. And I think that the thing that it's really done for me really is it's made me understand the difference between cultural Christianity and true faith in Christ.
Okay, I can see not only the title of the album here, Church Under Fire. You are under fire indeed. And
I am.
And thanks for coming with your passion. And
thank you.
Thanks for coming with your conviction. And for our audience, thank you for being with us with this interview with Kay Harrison. And after the break, we're going to have the song Church Under Fire.
Here I am, thinking of the faces, all the people and the places I have never seen. But still I know that we are blood related, and your pain is not outdated. For you are saturated in His love. Church under fire, you don't shrink back. You keep on walking, you keep on talking. Church under fire, you have nothing so full of Jesus, the Spirit's desire. So blessed are you, my brother, who walk upon this earth daily, knowing what He's worth. You know you lose. You've lost a lot, my sister. Ah, but look at what you got in Jesus, who is your treasure beyond any measure that I've known. Church under fire, you don't shrink back. You keep on walking, and you keep on talking. Church under fire, you have nothing so full of Jesus, Spirit's desire.
Good evening, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. This is 6 News. Tonight, 3 NRL players stood down after refusing to get the flu shot, the league making an historic call on anti-vaxxers. Also, a former pro soccer player found alive after being declared dead in a 2016 car crash. Australia's regional media companies fighting to stay afloat. Reporter Jack Hahn has the latest details on their future. Joe Biden and LeBron James speak of their disgust after an unarmed black man was shot dead in the state of Georgia earlier this year, with graphic footage of the moments before his death revealed. And a cold snap hits Victoria, but will the chilly weather continue? 6 News starts now. First tonight, the NRL has made an historic call regarding players who have refused to get the flu shot following heated debate throughout the week. Several high-profile players have refused to get that shot, and now 3 of them, Bruce Cartwright, Nathan Peets and Brian Kelly, have been stood down by the Gold Coast Titans over their decision. Channel 9 reports that they are unable to train unless they get the flu vaccination, and you're now seeing on screen that headline from news.com.au. So 3 players have been stood down over the flu shot saga. To some news just in, and images of a crane joyride in Victoria have just been revealed. It's believed $100,000 worth of damage was caused when the offender allegedly drove the machine 20 metres down the road after it was reportedly stolen from a workplace. Time to take a look at what's trending online, and a former pro soccer player has been found alive in Germany. The 33-year-old from Congo was declared dead in January 2016, but has since been found alive. Authorities have now launched a fraud investigation involving a woman in her late 30s who may have married the player Hanak Kamba. Some of Kamba's teammates have described him as an energetic person who always put his team first. Remember to have your say by using the hashtag 6NewsAU on our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram pages. Well, as we reported last week, Australia's regional media organisations have been forced to make drastic cuts because of low advertising revenue due to the pandemic. Reporter Jack Hahn joins me now live from his home in Wollongong. Jack, you've done some work for Channel 9 Illawarra. We can see that on the screen there, but what's your view on the current media situation?
Of course, the landscape in regional media is ever-changing. I think that's a reflection of our world. It is ever-changing. So from what I understand, of course, I'm only just really an intern, work experience kid, so I'm only speaking for myself personally here from the media reports I've seen, that there has been some readjustments with the Southern Cross Channel 9 news agreement. But personally, I can speak to all of the people that are a part of the regional news gathering at the 9 Network are wonderful people, so I could only give them my best wishes, and I really hope everything goes through. Obviously, their official releases from the 9 Network have said that this is just temporary while the coronavirus happens, so fingers crossed it all goes to work. I don't have any insider information. Like I said, I'm just an intern, but all of those people are lovely people. The whole team in Victoria, I've done quite a lot of work experience with the ones in New South Wales and of course Queensland, so hopefully everything works out for them. But yes, definitely an ever-changing market.
Thanks, Jack. Jack Hahn live in Wollongong there. Presidential candidate Joe Biden has spoken of his disgust after an unarmed black man was shot dead in the US state of Georgia. Graphic footage shows the 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery jogging in Georgia, then struggling with a man before 3 shots were heard. NBA star LeBron James has also spoken of his disgust on Twitter. However, some have criticised the basketball champion for quote-unquote pushing a political agenda. Victoria has been hit with more wild weather and it's set to continue. With that said, let's go to tomorrow's forecast around the nation. As always, starting in Darwin, where it's set to get to a top of 33. In Brisbane, 23. Sydney moving to a top of 17. Canberra starting the day at just 0 degrees, getting up to only 14. Melbourne a top of 17, rain on Tuesday. Hobart some clouds, 15. Adelaide 17, and Perth a top of 22. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram by using the hashtag 6NewsAU. For all our viewers watching via MELfeed.video, stick around because up next is a double episode of Harmony and Diversity. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.
Taking you to all of Melbourne's big events, it's 15 Fabulous Minutes, Mondays at 10. Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking again with Gayatri, who's a spiritual educator, writer, speaker, and a Brahma Kumari's representative of the United Nations, and Maureen, who was also a Brahma Kumari and has been so for some 30 years in Asia. She's now back in Australia and is involved in a project called The Future of Power. As we closed last week, Gayatri, you were outlining the 7 basic principles that sit behind the Brahma Kumari movement. Would you mind reiterating those?
Yeah, sure. The Brahma Kumari's teachings are actually foundational to what we learn here and what we practice here. And so the first principle lies in our first lesson, which is the principle of knowing the self. The second principle is knowing God and relating to God as an incorporeal being, a supreme being. The third principle is about relationships. My relationship with the Supreme Being and my relationship with others, and of course my relationship with myself. The fourth is understanding the principle of action. Some would call it the philosophy of karma, which would involve knowing how an action is done and what are the consequences of those actions and what are the accountabilities that are connected to the consequences. And then we have the principle of time.
Yes.
We see time as cyclical. And so it's a cycle of time. This world is a drama stage, and we are all actors. Then we have the principle of humanity being a world genealogical tree. And there's one seed to the tree. And so that principle of unity, when you come back to the seed of the tree. And then we have the principles of what is innate within the human beings, every human being, as we call them, the spiritual rights.
Yes.
And so within every human soul, there are virtues, which would be virtues like peace and love and joy and purity and truth. And also, when we manifest those in the way we operate in the world, we have what is called powers, like the power to cooperate, the power to tolerate, the power to face, the power to accommodate, so there are powers as well. So a spiritual way of living would be the combination, the principle of combining your virtues with your powers. Finally, it's the power of truth. And according to traditions, the power of truth is always oral. And so that final principle, when we are exploring truth and wisdom, we also bring to the attention how the knowledge gets transmitted orally, and then we introduce the whole concept of the revealed knowledge of the Brahma Kumaris.
Thank you for that. That's and it's clear that surrounding that power of the remembering are these principles. It's a core essence. You mentioned power a couple of times. Maureen, you're involved in a thing called the Future of Power. That sounds pretty fascinating. Can you give us an idea of the thrust of that?
Yeah, actually it was initiated by a person called Nizar Juma, who's based in Africa. And he's kind of like the right hand of the Aga Khan, so from a Muslim background.
Okay.
And he was chairman of 6 companies, but had a lot of stress, and he said his ego was bigger than Africa, which creates a lot of that stress and anger.
Right.
And from taking up this practice of kind of reflection and meditation, he found that when he could manage himself, then of course he could manage a lot more in the world as well. So from having 6 companies and so much stress, he has now built up to being the chairman of 54 companies.
Okay, that's obviously
many
worked.
of them publicly listed. And he says, I have really no stress and very little anger.
Right.
So he actually wanted to bring that experience to, you know, others, like what he was benefiting from. And within the Brahma Kumaris, we have 20 what we call wings, like departments.
Right.
So we have educators, jurists, agriculturalists, medical people, who are all trying to benefit people within their own profession from what they have developed. And I guess after 80 years of being an organisation, we've developed a big toolbox of you know, courses and values-based materials. Like we work in prisons, we work in farms with the farmers, we're working in the schools and all these different areas. So he partnered with the Brahma Kumaris to do this project called The Future of Power. And I've been actually living in India for the 4 years doing this project. And this is focused on India because what we're seeing is an emergence of power in India. Of course, economically, predominantly, but with power comes responsibility. So we're kind of going around and bringing leaders together into a dialogue in different cities. So I've been in 32 cities in India, bringing 30 to 40 top leaders from all the different fields together to dialogue about power. So the question is, what kind of power? We're specifically focused there on India, but we could focus anywhere. But what kind of power India will bring? Is it going to be the same thing, guns, money, or can India draw on its ancient tradition of values, culture, spirituality, and the power of the mind, which I was mentioning before, and really use a very different model in, you know, shaping power for the future? So really changing the face of power to make it more benevolent. In fact, a lot of people say, why do you call it power? That's so negative. And I say, well, power's not negative. The way we're using it is.
What we do with it, yes. And trying to constrain ourselves within containers called time is also pretty stressful. We're out of it for the moment. We'll be back in a moment.
After over 25 years of broadcasting into homes across Australia, the Minister for Communications, Paul Fletcher, intends to switch off community television stations by June 30 this year. Community television provides an open access, free-to-air platform for Australians to connect, to learn, to educate to express themselves and showcases our diverse and vibrant local communities. But on July 1, it will be gone from the airways forever. Instead, it will be replaced by up to 5 years of white noise. The federal government has no alternative planned use for the spectrum community TV occupies, and will be unable to do anything in its place for years to come. There is no upside and no explanation. We ask Minister Fletcher to show his support for the remaining stations and to keep local TV on TV. For more information, email info@c31.org.au.
Joy, well-being, community, inclusion.
Special Olympics is a global movement for people with an intellectual disability, creating a world of inclusion and community through sport, where every person is accepted and welcomed, regardless of ability. One athlete, one volunteer, one family member at a time, helping to make the world a better place. Join the inclusion revolution by supporting Special Olympics.
And choose to include.
Hallelujah. Mani
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Gayatri and Maureen, both of whom are Brahma Kumaris, and we're basically talking about power. Gayatri, there's a process that you're involved in, I believe, which is called the call of the times, and that's to do with power. How does that work?
The call of the time has nothing to do with power.
Well, I got that wrong then, didn't I?
You did, because I'm one of those strong believers that power is negative.
Yes, okay.
I was involved with the call of the time since 1999. And the Daddy Janki, or chief of the Brahma Kumaris, called together a group of people from around the United Nations. And she asked them the question, how can we be of service to you? And their answer was quite surprising. At the time I heard it, not so surprising today. And they said to her that they were interested in a domain that they felt a real transformation happened in. It's a little bit like Einstein saying the domain that problems were created is not the same domain the solutions would be found. I'm paraphrasing here.
Yes, yes.
And so they wanted to explore that spiritual domain in which solutions could emerge from. And so the call of the time is actually set within the context that in the domain of silence, silence not an absence of something, but silence the presence of something, that solutions and answers could emerge from. And so it's a dialogue that we hold around the world, in different parts of the world. And the dialogue is really bringing together people who are personally practitioners of different spiritual disciplines, but they have a commitment to their personal practice. And then they integrate that into the work that they do. So they're working with the double helix of the spiritual with the secular.
Yes.
And the benefit of these dialogues is that when someone embarks upon the world stage, coming from personal spirituality and integrating that into the work they do, they can really feel lonely. And sometimes very much alone, because it's as though they're swimming against the tide.
Yes.
And so when they come together with people who are doing similar things, this network becomes a network of great benefit to them. They know that they could call on someone from the other side of the world and say, I'm going through this, could you help me think it through? Knowing that they wouldn't just come from the secular perspective or the secular world, but they know that there are certain elements that they're working on the inside of themselves that they could bring to make a difference in the work that they do. So that's what the Call of the Time dialogue is all about. But the question, I think, that is very, very significant is to ask them when they come in for their check-in, you know, when you sit together and you do that check-in, what is the call of the time for you? And it's always a very moving question. What is the call of the time for me?
That's amazing. And so, the silence that you were talking about, were you referring to remembering? Were you referring to people in remembering space collectively or individually? Or?
Beautiful question. You always would go into silence, of course, stepping into the self. So it's a personal choice.
Yes.
Silence is a choice. You step into this space of silence. But when you're doing it together, it becomes a space of collective silence. And what is beautiful, they would literally spend about 6 hours in this collective silence. And what emerges is a collective wisdom. Because when they talk about what came out of the silence, you could see it weaving this beautiful tapestry. And the beautiful tapestry is a collective wisdom. And so that in itself is very unifying for them and brings them very close.
Yes, it's powerful. It's oftentimes when you come out of having had some experience, and that you come out of it, there's a palpable presence. You can almost cut it with a knife. And so what you're actually turning that into outcomes. That's a worldwide movement.
Yes, it is a worldwide movement, and it is intended to help people understand this paradigm, that there is a paradigm shift, and it is all about the inside out rather than the outside in. And so more people are beginning to look for strength. It's not I'm against the word power, but I think what I like more is the word strength. And so it is more meaning making for them, it's more strength generating for them, but it's coming from a space that goes beyond the selfish motives.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's why power for me is always connected to something selfish, whereas strength is connecting more to generate something for me that could be of benefit to others.
Is that the core thing that you do as a Brahma Kumari in the United Nations? Is that what you're doing there, or do you do other things?
Well, it got stimulated from people within the UN, the call of the time. But what I do at the United Nations is that we have what is called a consultative status with the Economic and Social Council, and we're supposed to bring an expertise of the work and the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris to help the United Nations with the work, their policies and their action plans, and etc., and bring it back to the people. And within that, we had to really distinctly tell the United Nations what is the expertise we're bringing to their programs.
Yes.
And our expertise that we bring to the United Nations is a spiritual trajectory of awareness, attitude, vision, action, which is a neutral trajectory.
Yes.
But it is very important that before the United Nations, we were to say to the United Nations, okay, I'd like to take up the issue of environment. When we take that issue of environment up and bring it to the people so that they could know what's going on, we bring it with that spiritual thrust of what's the awareness I should have in my relationship with the environment, what's my attitude toward it, what is my perception, and then what's my action.
And the action at the present moment is to go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
After over 25 years of broadcasting into homes across Australia, the Minister for Communications, Paul Fletcher, intends to switch off community television stations by June 30 this year. Community television provides an open access, free-to-air platform for Australians to connect, to learn, to educate, to express themselves, and showcases our diverse and vibrant local communities. But on July 1, it will be gone from the airways forever. Instead, it will be replaced by up to 5 years of white noise. The federal government has no alternative planned use for the spectrum community TV occupies, and will be unable to do anything in its place for years to come. There is no upside and no explanation. We ask Minister Fletcher to show his support for the remaining stations and to keep local TV on TV. For more information, email info@c31.org.au.
Every time we buy certified organic, we're making a choice. to help our environment and build a healthier community. But it can be hard to know that what we're buying is truly organic. The Australian Certified Organic logo is only given to products after a very rigorous process. So when you see this logo, it means you can trust that there are no genetically modified foods, no animal cruelty, and no harsh synthetic pesticides used. A healthier community is always better for our future. So the next time you shop, look for this logo.
You're there when they can't sleep. You're there when they forget. But who's there when they're at school? Asthma can be serious. It affects 1 in 10 Australians and claims 400 lives each year. Does anyone at your school know what to do in an asthma emergency? Log on to asthmafriendlyschools.org.au and find out if your school is asthma friendly. Shouldn't every school be asthma friendly?
Hallelujah. Mani
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Gayatri and Maureen Brahmakumaris. Now, Maureen, Gayatri sort of challenged you on power. Tell us a bit more about power.
Well, I guess being involved in this particular topic for so long, and I've met over 1,000 leaders all over India, and I think there can be another way that power is used, but probably to sum it all up in just one quote that I heard from someone, he said that we never thought of ourselves in the past as powerful. Okay. And we meaning, I guess it was Indian, but I think he means from his tradition, we never thought of ourselves as powerful, but empowered.
Right.
And when we think we are powerful, we destroy everything.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think this is what it's all about, that as much as we can get out of our own way, get out of God's way, there's a lot that can be done if we let the divine work through us. And this is what I think a lot of this is to do with. I mean, I know myself, I took up something we were talking a little bit before about the Tao, and there was a sentence that said, few leaders realize how little they have to do. And the less I do, the more effective.
Yes.
So I think to look at power in a very different way is to explore some of these ideas. What is real power? It's nothing to do with the power we see out there in the world nowadays. So I have a little bit different.
I think peace has been made. Now this communication is a massive issue, and you're just talking about the way in which probably the media use the concept of power, which actually causes people to associate it with something that may be negatively loaded. IVOH, what's that about? That sounds pretty fascinating when you described it before.
Images and Voices of Hope actually came into being about maybe 15 years ago. And it actually started with a group of people from the media who were looking at the impact of images and messages that were being exported from the United States to other parts of the world, and the impact that was having on meaning making in the world.
Yes.
And how much it was impacting particularly the younger generation, and molding and shaping their intellects in understanding the United States and understanding their own countries. And so they decided that they would create an organization that was called Images and Voices of Hope, to show the other side of the United States and the images that they would export to bring hope into people's lives. And it started as media as an agent for world benefit. You know, the media in many parts of the world think that they're neutral. They tell you the news as it is, but they don't advocate something. They don't try to bring benefit. Here it is, you take it, it's your choice how you want to use it. But I think ever since, within the last 15 years of Images and Voices of Hope, we have noticed that more and more people are beginning to think differently about what news is and the impact of news on people whose lives, because you're sitting in your living room, you put on your television, and there is the news. It's not that you could filter it out as such. And it has grown over the years, but I think this year, in 2014, we actually hit a nerve that I think is very, very important. And that is, we have come to the point in which collectively, with media makers from around the world, and by media makers we mean people who are journalists, people who are documentary filmmakers, people who are artists, people who are in the advertising arenas, they all come together and they coin this term restorative narrative. Restorative narrative is an approach to covering a story. And so in covering the story, the journalists would then look at different factors. And so the principles behind the covering of the stories, or the factors to be considered, would be recovering. What is being recovered? The recovery process. What is being revitalized? What is being restored? And so within those three principles, then you see that the journalist is not just telling you if it bleeds, it leads. But the journalist is saying, look, there is a community that's in recovery. And what the community is building here is resilience. And so within that resilience building, we have to be patient with the community. We may cover it that this event happened, but we have to have a sustaining kind of approach that would show the recovery process that is taking place within the community. So that requires from the person covering the story to be a little bit more attentive to this process that is restorative, so that people can then see that there is hope even if there was a disaster. And so they are going into the direction of the hope rather than becoming victims of the disaster and staying as victims of that disaster. So in essence, that's what restorative narrative is.
And in essence, it fits in very much with what the Brahma Kumaris are about, isn't it?
Yes, it does.
It's bringing because as you say, there's that shock, that little square electronic box is throwing these huge images out of you, very destructive. And this brings in the potential for the future, what's really going to happen. It's a bit like remembering, isn't it? It's a bit like remembering. I'm a bit stuck on that. It's been fantastic just to talk through what the Brahma Kumari movement itself is about, where it comes from, and what you're actually doing. And in the United Nations, the impact of having that in the United Nations is just amazing. And the power issue, whether we call it power or not, is another one. And teaching people the capacity to remember. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV.
Hallelujah. Om Mani Padme Om.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking with Father John Dupuche. He's one of the originators of the joint journey to Jerusalem, which is an issue we'll talk about later. But as is the custom, let's talk about how Father John has become Father John. Thanks for coming, Father.
Thank you very much. Well, can I go back to early days?
As early as you like.
I suppose the first major conscious experience that I had was at the age of 7, if I may say so, when I sort of, something profound happened in me, around about the time of First Communion, and when I became aware, I'll put it in these words now, of the one who is. Now that sounds a bit sort of metaphysical, but that was sort of the experience that it has. It was a real, perhaps first conscious experience of any significance. And so then the wish came that I want to be with the one who is. And that was a great advantage because it gave me, you might say, great stability and a great sort of sense of security and peace with there is one who is.
Absolutely.
And so that became very basic. And about the same time then I thought, well, now I should become a priest too. It sort of seemed to fit into the same context. So that sort of wish continued. My background, which is perhaps of some interest in here, is very, very French. So I was born both French and Australian, both at once. And my parents were French, and the family context was French. We spoke French. The whole culture of the home was French, and so on and so forth. So I sort of feel in a French way and think in a French way.
Okay.
I speak French with English words, that type of thing.
Yes.
And we often would travel to France every 2 or 3 years, and as a family, France, and so it had a big impact. The time passes, and I suppose the next major experience, if this is of interest to you,
absolutely,
is when around about the age of 15 there was a retreat at Xavier College. I went to Xavier College, and I thought to myself, well, now I will go to the ends of the earth. This the great adventure of life, and readiness to take whatever might happen. And so I entered the Jesuits then, as seemed to be the natural way to do it.
Okay.
To move on, and I was with the Jesuits for many years, and that was a valuable experience too, because I learnt lots of things. Attitude to study, also experiencing meditation, the whole practice of meditation. It was a very valuable time.
Yes.
But also it's a bit of confusing time too, because it's the start of Vatican II occurs at that time, and there's the whole shift going on in the church at the time. And while there were very happy years there, when I was with the Jesuits, I realized eventually that something was not right, that I should shift and change. And it was a big change for me to leave what I had spent many years with, and to move out into the unknown. This is part of the big great adventure, to go out into the unknown.
Yes.
And so I left the Jesuits, not knowing quite where things would go. And I think in the long run it proved to be the right thing, because I doubt I would have moved into this, or discovered and moved into this area of interfaith relations if I'd been in the Jesuits. I'd been taught to do something else.
Yes.
I would have had the opportunity to search and to discover. And so I moved out then, and of course a period of uncertainty, of change, and so on and so forth. I travelled a lot during this time. I taught in France, and I speak French fluently and all that sort of thing. So, but I did want to continue to be a priest. So I came back and then continued in the diocesan seminary. And I went to the Glen Waverley in Clayton and so on, and did my course in theology, double course in theology actually. And I thought for a time too, should I become a monk? So I went to Tarawara, the Cistercian Abbey, and I thought, well, now it was a wonderful experience. I thought I should become a monk. But then at the same time I thought, I don't want to be tucked away in a monastery. Nice that would have been.
That's right.
I wanted to speak the words of God to the people of God. So this whole idea of, being in public in some sense.
Yes.
And so I continued on with priestly activity. I was duly ordained, and then after my 3-year stint, as was the custom in those days, I then got appointed to Christ College, which was one of the constituent colleges eventually of ACE, Australian Catholic University.
Yeah.
So I taught there, I was head of the RE department there and taught there theology for many years. And this was an advantage too because it gave me a good knowledge of theology. The best way to know theology is to teach it, so you sort of picked up lots of things. So time passes, and then I begin to discover, so I'm searching all the time, and I begin to discover areas of thought that attracted me. On my day off, I used to go to the library, a big library in the city, bookshop in the city, and I'd always end up in the Indian section. And so there was something attracting me there. So this is all part of an exploration, you might say. I was happy to be a priest, but I was also exploring for something else.
Yeah.
And the books was the way, because Australia is so far from anywhere that I felt I needed to, so time passes, and I discover fields of thought. I use the word Tantra because that's a significant word. I discovered a book on Tantra in one of the bookshops in Carlton, started to read around it.
Yes.
And I felt there was something very valuable here, but at the same time there's a lot of mixed stuff in that field.
Of course, yes.
And so you had to sort of use my, let us say, some interior light, if you like, to assess what was good, what was not good, and to avoid pitfalls. So there was a time of discernment, and my training in the Jesuit was very valuable in that, in the whole process of discernment. And so I sort of read around and all that type of thing. My father passed away. My mother was very sad as a consequence. I thought, it's important for her to go for a trip to France. So once again, I took her to France.
Before you go to France, we'll pick that up in a minute. We'll go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
If a man's home is his castle, his shed is his kingdom. It's a place men can hang out with a few mates, build a few things, even if you haven't before, and give back to the community. No man should be without a shed. The Australian Men's Shed Association is working to provide a shed for all Australian men, and they have over 400 already. Visit your local shed, build your community, and make a difference. Find a shed near you. It's time to give back.
Which one are you going to get? This lady? Boy. Oh, you can't. Just a minute. Okay.
Just needs a bit of discipline. Can I help you with your bags?
Thank you.
Autism. Change your reactions, change your actions.
Tick, 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 fashion.
Tick, 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 fun.
Tick, 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 food.
Tick, 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 festivals.
All make up 15 fabulous minutes.
In a half-hour special.
Presented to you by Jacqueline and Steve.
Every week. Time's up.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Father John Dupuche. And Father John, you were talking about the influence of Hinduism, the Eastern Indian religions. Kashmiri Shaivism is something which you've taken a bit of a look at. Can you explain that a bit?
Well, it was in the process. I'll just give a few preliminary sentences on this because I discovered a field called Kashmir Shaivism, and I wrote to B. Griffiths asking for advice. And he wrote back to me saying I should get in contact with someone called Thomas Mattis. So because of the work I'd done at Christ College, the Archbishop gave me a year's sabbatical.
Right.
So I went overseas, spent time with him, and in Paris, in a bookshop in Paris, I discovered this field of Kashmir Shaivism.
Yes.
Very much under the impact and suggestion of Thomas Mattis. And the books then were available in French, but they were available, and which I had not had before.
Right.
So I discovered this field, and I found it very, very exciting because Kashmir Shaivism begins about 1,000 years ago. In fact, the high point of it is 1,000 years ago exactly.
Yes.
Under the great writer Abhinavagupta. And who lives in Kashmir, so it's called Kashmir Shaivism. It's called Shaivism because the principal deity in it is Shiva, therefore Shaivism.
Right.
And but it's a non-dualist system. I'll explain that a little bit. We tend in our Western theology to divide things up. Dualist. Heaven, earth.
Yeah.
God, man. Heaven, creation. Sin, grace. All the way through. Church, state.
Yeah.
Whereas the non-dualist system sees all these things as one.
Yeah.
And so there's not this break. In fact, all things, if you like, are divine in a sense that has to be understood properly.
Yes.
All things are graced.
Yes.
Even what may appear to be bad is in fact, in some sense, graced. The distinction between even good and evil. I mean, what is good, what is evil? You know, all these questions come up. And so it's a much more stimulating thing, because when you start to join opposites together, and to see that in some profound sense they cohere, then there's great excitement, or if you like, there's a great display of energy. And in fact, it fits in very well with Christianity, because Christianity is a profoundly, in fact, non-dualist system.
Yes, of course.
Because Jesus is both God and man.
Yes.
He knows heaven and hell. He knows good and evil. He knows sin and grace. All those things, he knows them. And he wants to know them. He wants to enter into the paradox of all these contrasting things. Because in the context of paradox, there is a deeper knowledge.
Yes.
So I found that all very, very exciting. That's part of all of this, to put it very simply in a very few words.
Yes.
But that's sort of a fairly basic aspect of this. And I found it healed in a way this division that we've created in our Western mindset, where we divide.
It's not hard to imagine why then you would be one of the originators of this joint journey to Jerusalem, because you've got the capacity to embrace a broader perspective from that interest.
Well, in fact, of course, that happened. So I found the great interest in myself in this field, which is so different from Christianity, that there was a dialogue going on inside me. How does Christianity fit in with Kashmir Shaivism? How does one light shed its light upon another?
Yes.
So the interplay of these things and the mutual illumination that goes on. So there was an interior dialogue going within me, and this sort of naturally led then to an exterior dialogue.
Yes.
So I then begin this process of being involved in the commission, the Ecumenical Interfaith Commission of the Archdiocese.
Yes.
And to get myself involved in interfaith relations on in a public sphere, you might say, in Melbourne. And so it leads on very naturally, of course, to what we'll talk about later, this joint journey to Jerusalem.
Yes.
But that, of course, comes at a later stage.
Yes.
So my real involvement with interfaith relations begins, let us say, 15 years ago, and there's all sorts of activities that occur, helped by the Commission, and I'm chair of the Catholic Interfaith Committee, and our role is to work with the Commission and to suggest things and to report to the Commission. So a whole range of activities with Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and so on, so a whole range of things. And it does lead on to this this field.
Yeah, I was struck by the potential to go back even further as far as that non-dualism is concerned, into Taoism, and does it go, do you see a connection between Taoism?
Well, of course, there are connections, and so to come back to this word Tantra, which is so misunderstood, the Indians are very embarrassed about the use of the word in Western culture.
Yes.
They find it just
it has a
very, very bad connotations.
That's right.
But in the Indian system, it is, is perfectly acceptable. and sometimes they refer to Tantra as the Chinese knowledge, or the Chinese path. So there seems to be some connection between Taoism and the Indian form. But of course that's a field that it was a big enough field to enter into, because I felt that reading these texts that I would read them a little bit but not understand them adequately, but they produce excitement in me. A great resonance would occur, a humming would occur, like a primordial sound. And I felt I wanted to know. So B. Griffiths came to Melbourne, his last visit to Melbourne, and gave a talk. And his talk inspired me. I said, I got to stop beating around the bush and do something. So I went to see a lecturer at La Trobe, and he said, you must learn Sanskrit. And so I learned Sanskrit then, which is a difficult language, then did a doctoral work on it, and then translated a text and did a commentary. And I felt that I knew something about the field. So thanks to B. Griffiths, who was inspiring in that way.
Yes, and what a task to take on Sanskrit.
Yes. But it is very valuable to know the actual language, the proper terminology.
And there is a language which is universal, and that's the language of time. And we'll go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Community television is a part of Australia's media landscape, and it's yours. On July 1, it could be gone from the airwaves forever. In its place, the Minister for Communications, Paul Fletcher, intends to replace a vibrant and diverse media sector with years and years and years of white noise. When there is no cost to the Australian government to keep community television on the air, and in the absence of a viable alternative, we ask Minister Fletcher to keep local TV on TV. For more information, email info@c31.org.au.
This season, we need your help to control Queensland fruit fly in our region. Your infested fruit is destroying your neighbour's harvest and the livelihood of our orchardists and their families. Pick up and dispose of fallen fruit. Infected fruit in your backyard is a breeding ground for fruit fly. Monitor fruit fly numbers by hanging traps in your fruit trees. Traps can be purchased at your local hardware stores. Net your fruit trees and susceptible vegetables with fruit fly specific netting. Contact us for information.
The tax office can take money directly out of people's accounts, but you're not allowed to know. The elderly are being abused and neglected in nursing homes, but you're not allowed to know. The government can raid journalists for reporting the truth if it says you're not allowed to know. It couldn't happen in Australia. It's happening now. When the government hides the truth from you, what are they covering up? Authorised by Australia's Right to Know, Sydney.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Father John Dupuche, who's one of the originators of the joint journey to Jerusalem. Father, you were speaking before about someone who's quite notorious in relation to interreligious issues is Bede Griffiths. How was your association with him? Was it just by letter, or did you?
No, I went to Shantivanam and spent 2 months there.
Oh, did you?
And so I knew him to some extent, you know, and conversed with him and spoke with him. He's a significant figure, of course, because so many people were inspired around the world by his writings and his lectures and so on, and above all the example that he gave of an ashram. And I find the ashram sort of life rather fascinating and valuable. In fact, with my interest in interfaith relations, I decided to have a little ashram or community, interfaith community in the presbytery or the parish house where I live in the parish.
Oh, right.
So there was myself, the Catholic priest, and there was a Buddhist monk, and then a Hindu Swami. And so we lived together for many years. Two have moved on to bigger and better things, you might say, but it was an important period for them to establish themselves, I suppose. And then I have now a house in Warburton, nice bit of land, and I want to set up a little interfaith ashram. In fact, a couple of Hindus are coming to live there in a couple of weeks' time.
Right.
And so to develop an interfaith ashram with all the stimulus that comes from mixing and meeting with people of different backgrounds and interests.
That's fascinating, and particularly in Australia and Melbourne.
Well, it's very unusual.
Yes,
There's probably nothing
yes.
much like it elsewhere.
No, there's a lot of different religions here. Yes. So what's the general interest in the ashram? Is there?
Well, people are fascinated by the idea. It's because in the process we have interfaith retreats as well, and in the process of conversing with people who have a different point of view, it's not a question of arriving at the same point of view, because that'll never happen, but in the very meeting of contrasts, one has to go in depth. And it's this process of depthing which really takes us to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
And so I find that particularly valuable. And there's sort of once again, this resonance happens, but not in the realm of ideas, but in the realm of relations with people.
Relationships,
And so you discover the heart of the matter as a result.
Can we go back to a very primary relationship? I was quite taken by the fact that you were 7 years old when you had this encounter. That must have been fairly deep in itself. What did that look like?
Well, it was sort of a profound experience which occurred with great simplicity. There was no disturbance around it. It was just an awareness of something that was so real, or someone, not something, but someone, and who is real, and with whom then I found myself, in a sense, one.
Yes,
to be with the one who is, and to be one with the one who is. So that's sort of, and this it's fairly straightforward in a way to me.
It's straightforward, but I suggest it's fairly unique. It's quite a deep experience for someone of that age.
Yes.
Now that sort of rolls over. So do you think you were? Well, it's the answer to the question is yes, but there seemed to be a destiny for you to move into that melding together of religious intensity, where people are coming.
Well, I think this whole idea of being with the one who is, this idea that one, of course, is a personal noun, if you like. This idea of oneness then is essential, because one can only be with the one who is if one is, united with others, and because division and opposition and conflict only prevent the process of becoming united.
Yes, it's the most often spoken of, the great unity, which is and B. Griffiths referred to that many times.
That's right. So it's not a level of rituals or level of ideas. It's on a much more transcendent, or if you like, much more depthed level.
And then around 15, you had another sort of experience. Yes. What did that look like?
Well, I can remember myself bending over a pew, in Xavier Cottage Chapel, with this profound experience happening of really being called or invited or drawn, if you like, this whole being drawn into the unknown. And for me, the unknown, because I travel lots of the world by this stage, we travelled lots as a child, was South Africa. I've never been to South America. I've been to South Africa, but not South America. And I thought, well, even if it's South America, I would go anywhere.
Yes.
And so to the unknown, and this creates this great sense of adventurousness. And for a boy of 15, the adventure, of course, of life. But this is a spiritual adventure, which I think is the most profound form of adventure, is the
absolutely
a spiritual one. So
and do you think you've been able to imbue other people with that capacity for insights?
I don't know. I really don't know. They'll tell me if I
yes, I guess they will.
But I think people are intrigued by this whole field of interfaith relations. People find it particularly valuable these days. And so the parishioners, they know all about this type of activity, and they think it's wonderful. They think it's just so right. And the Catholic Church Life Survey, whatever it's called, there's a quick name to it.
Yes.
That says that most Catholics, it's only a Catholic survey, most Catholics consider interfaith relations as being very important.
Right.
So I think they, not that I caused that, but I like to think that my interests fit in with that perception.
Yes, it gives you confidence with the interfaith work that you're in. That
it fits in with the church, and ultimately the church must judge. I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
One mustn't go one's own. One must also do with the wisdom of others too. You know,
exactly right. And as far as wisdom's concerned, we've basically run out of time, but I will invite you to the next program, if you would, to speak more deeply about the joint journey to Jerusalem. Would you be available to do that?
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to talk about that.
Thank you very much, Father. We'll be back next week, and we'll speak more with Father John Depuch about the joint journey to Jerusalem. Thanks for watching.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu
Hi, I'm Leonardo Puglisi from the 6 News team. In these tough times, it's important to keep your family and your friends safe by listening to government regulations. Avoid outdoor activity with the exception of exercise and getting essential items as well as medical care. Remember, we're all in this together.
Behind your favourite team, there's another team. At all levels, in all codes, sports trainers are working to make sport safer. Sports trainers learn injury prevention techniques from doctors and other health professionals so they can provide the right first aid when the going gets tough. If your team could do with a sports trainer, maybe it's time you got a little closer to the act. Find out how you can become a sports trainer. Sports Medicine Australia, providing the team behind the team.
Most of us experience life's ups and downs, but we can always appreciate the finer details that make life worth living. But for 1 in 5 of us, mental illness can make us lose sight of the big picture. That's when Paran Mission can lend a helping hand. We've been caring for the community for over 60 years, finding a place for people with no place. Show your support and stand up for mental illness. Visit our website and make a donation today.
Transports of Distant Delight is a mixed selection of transportation pictures from here and there and almost everywhere, but not quite. Some quirky, some mundane, some from the past, perhaps reflecting a transit system that has vanished into history, and some from thriving transport entities that continue to endure despite the constant pressures from the all-pervasive motorcar. Enjoy. Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV.
The following program carries an MA classification and may contain adult themes and coarse language. MELfeed Video advises that it is suitable for viewers aged 15 plus.
Hello there. I don't want to sound like a kind of middle-aged grump or anything, but this is actually about Christmas Day, which happened recently. It's called Yuletide Musings. The fag end of another year. Meanings belly flop. Life is what you want it to be, but soufflés don't always rise. Children play on bikes. It's Christmas Day. My cul-de-sac is a measureless circuit of wild-eyed fun and noise. Parents in dressing gowns look washed out, knackered. Their bank accounts redder than the combined Greek and Irish deficit. Exhausted, irritable, but with pride. A vicarious pleasure in their offspring. Parents watch their 4-year-olds, awaiting future. Time's maverick expanse. Some will get pissed or do drugs in order to get through the stress. Even TV news and lawn mowing is bearable. But excessive idleness is bad for the GDP. I drink strong coffee and let certain nuances fill out somewhere in my head. The way ink clouds fill out a jar of water, or mosquitoes multiply in hot night rooms. I'm satisfied that I haven't bought or received, remain outside the tedious paradigm of profit and loss. The saccharine emotions of uber-capitalist bosh. I am free, liberated, at least for now. Thank you.
No, I've been writing poetry for a long time, and I searched for some really, really old poems, and a couple of them have just disappeared. They're no more. But this one was written way back in 1986. It's called Macrame. It was taken from one of those old macrame books and sort of like a found poem in a way. There's a loophole in this knotted world, a twisted cord subtracting colour, leaving sinnets and miscellaneous twisted half-knots, ultimate cost unknown. Synthetic hitches tassel and fringe, but the lark's head is alone in the tightly knitted weave, and a slip in this all cannot undo all, only combine to form repeated overhand shapes, linear patterns and working chords. A straight edge is as hard as lacings and crossings to achieve, yet we strive for it, often giving nautical embellishments where a clove hitch might have been suitable. Lucky for us, there are still those with ideals in this knotted world that will repeat, use the alternate colour and finish, will use half knots without adding or squaring or shaping sinnets to hitch or combine. It can be seen that plain, frugal, coarse jute can be part of the yarn that weaves on the looms.
Mean
And this happened in another state. It happened in Boulder, Colorado, and I swear this is true, and I hope most of you remember Jeff Kennett. "8,000 feet up, Rocky Mountains, Boulder, Colorado, yuppie tourist skiing village, the basement of a bohemian cafe, poetry tonight, arriving from Melbourne, Australia, to read an exotic species, to read poetry. A voice called from the rear of the darkened room, 'How are things in Victoria?' 'Pretty bad,' I respond. 'We've a premier who's sacking teachers and nurses. He's bulldozing schools. He's selling off publicly owned utilities. He's laying a racetrack in the People's Park. And in the dead of night, he's pushing bills through Parliament, changing laws, taking away our rights.' The questioner, trendy, conservative, a little crestfallen, reveals himself. 'Jeff Kennett's my brother.' Practically speechless, I retort, 'Sorry, I can't do much about that.' Jeff's brother didn't stay for the poetry. Vanished quite suddenly. Pursuing him, I guess, a little too closely was the ghost of Jeffrey. Thank you.
Behind every great athlete, there is a great support network. Australian Athletes with a Disability and Wheelchair Sports Australia help athletes realise their full potential.
Gonna go from 3. Yes!
No matter their ability, we're there to support them. Sporting opportunities for all abilities. For more information, visit sports.org.au.
This bank is helping to save lives. Every year, 500,000 Victorians have no idea where their next meal is coming from. Food Bank Victoria works with farmers, supermarkets and manufacturers to make sure their surplus stock ends up here, to be distributed to those in need. But all of this is not enough. Right now, this bank needs interest, your interest, to support Victorians in need. If you can help, visit foodbankvictoria.org.au.
Imagine not seeing the world you live in. Macular disease is Australia's leading cause of blindness. Donate now to Macular Disease Foundation Australia. Call 1800 111 709 or visit mdfoundation.com.au.
We reckon one of the most powerful things in the world is this sausage. Because a sausage can do just about anything. It helps people to walk, see and hear, supports families after fire, drought and flood, and even helps plant trees in our community. Our sausages are working to cure cancer, helping farmers in tough times, and connecting people who are new to a community. And at the same time that they're doing all that, they're nurturing the leaders of tomorrow while building friendships that last a lifetime. Yep, these humble sausages are more powerful than you can believe. They're working wonders in our community. And at Lions, so can you. Lions Australia, we serve more than sausages.
I am the alley, the laneway, the back street. I am the outside of the street. I am the stinky, smelly, grotty, greasy alley. I am the garbage bags ravaged by birds and rats. I am the grey, greasy water that seeps out under back fences over bitumen and bluestone. I am the inside air on the outside night. I am the roaring gutter seas. I am the cardboard boxes stacked and piled into mountains. I am the lettuce leaves that rot in them. I am the rain that melts them. I'm the delivery vans that squash them and spread them further down the alley. I'm the cigarette butts that swim in the gutters and litter the lane. I am the milk crates that give seats
and hemorrhoids to the waiters and chefs, scattered and pushed against back fences, placed to capture the rare rays of the sun, left there by cafe workers that leave in a hurry when the rush is on. I am the wheelie bins that wait in a row, waiting to be emptied. I am the smashing wine bottles and empty olive jars. I am the tins of dripping and vats of fat and buckets of lard. I am newspapers blowing in the wind. I'm the council mini sweeper, street sweeper, brushes twirling, lights flashing. I am the alley, the backside of the city. I am the digestive system of the city. I am the intestines and bowels of the city, the intake and output. I am the alley, not the bright facade, but the dark underbelly. I am the laneway that no one walks down unless they have good reason. I am the laneway that no one ever finds them in by mistake. I am the laneway where the deals are done. I am the laneway where people get stabbed for very definite reasons. I am the laneway that isn't romantic, where love does not blossom, where lovers do not kiss or skip down it holding hands. I am the laneway where no one cares what you are wearing. I am the laneway that doesn't have an arts festival or a street parade. I am the laneway where men in suits mean trouble. I am the laneway that is not a shortcut or way of getting to where you want to get to quicker. I am the laneway, the alley. I am the back street of the back streets, where boys spray their scrawl demanding recognition, screaming, "I exist, I exist, I exist," over and over and over and over. I am the alley where scavengers have 4 feet or 2. I am the lane where things can be reused, are reused, recycled, repurposed. I am the alley where lives are organised, text messages sent between knives and forks and cigarettes, phone calls made, deals done, things arranged. I am the back lane where no one comes to stay, where everyone is just passing through or passing out or throwing up or taking a piss or taking a dump or smoking a joint or hitting up. I am the back alleys and laneways with all their imperfections. I am the alleys that service the world. I am the laneways that will never be trendy. I am the alleys where everything that was once on is now off. I am the lane in which no one chooses to be. I am the other side. I am the city's other. I am invisible to the traffic and throng of the streets. I am the alley and I am happy. I am happy being the alley. I am happy in the alley. I grew up in an alley. I will probably die in an alley. When I do, just put me in a wheelie bin. They'll take me away in the morning. Thank you.
You're all tiger, all sex, all mood swing. You're half Javanese, part Krakatoa. Maybe things are going very wrong, but to survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. You don't know where I've been at times. You can't show what's troubling you. You're facing doctors and you hate them with a passion. To survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. All your friends knew all along. Half of what was fine about you was halfway crazy. To survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. You get on your scooter, darling, ride to work at the casino. You fleece the roulette boys to fund your art form. To survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. We'd win at pool, you'd cartwheel in a pub. How I loved to watch you juggle down the beach. Please don't hate me, now my body's stepped away. To survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. I've held you back from hospital, held you knotted up with my fears. Take your meds, my sweet, kick your dance alive, and to survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend. Take it easy, darling, you got things to do. Stay the patient, outpatient, and see it through. What you do from here is most of what you do. To survive, to survive, to survive, my friend, to survive, my friend.
I was in my 40s when I was first diagnosed with bowel cancer. George, my son, was 6 years old at that time. These days, like people of his age, he's very busy, but he still needs to find the time to get to know his bowel cancer risk. Is that right, George?
Yes, Dad. Bowel cancer affects 1 in 12 Australians, young and old, and is our second biggest cancer killer. But if caught early, bowel cancer is treatable and beatable. My dad is living proof of that. So get to know your bowel cancer risk. Talk to your pharmacist or GP about screening. Protect yourself and the ones you love. Go to lovemyfamily.org.au.
Hi, I'm Lane Beachley. Australians have recycled enough printer cartridges to cover Bondi Beach 12 times. That's kept 11,000 tonnes of valuable resources out of landfill. Drop your used original cartridges into the special boxes at participating retail outlets, and they'll be turned into new products from pens to road surfaces. Help us keep up the good work. Find out more at cartridges.planetark.org.
Man to man, it's time to stop.
Stop the tragic waste of life and the destruction of families, including your own.
Stop blaming drugs and alcohol and believing that walking away makes you weak.
Stop thinking you're a hero and wasting your life behind bars, wishing you could take that one moment back.
Stop the coward's punch.
I found this one written in cockroach shit on my kitchen floor. So I gave it my own title, which is Cloverfield Cockroach. It's actually quite a serious poem, so. Monster, you are the huge, violent threat to my sanity. Unguessably large, your vastness beyond the reach of my senses. Your dark, shapeless shadow is the terror of my nightmares. Poisonous gases streaming from your fingertips, igniting hellfire on the white mountain. I am grateful that you roam this city only in the first watches of the night and in the first few hours after dawn, appearing only when the great light comes in the sky. Else I could not live for fear. If you needed to eat my flesh to live, I could understand. But your desire is solely to maim and destroy. Even children, the subject of your wrath. And I, what can I do against such monstrosity, such cruelty, such pitiless savagery? As if my very existence were an affront to you. And yet, I would be no cockroach if I did not feel at the same time some sympathy. Your vastness is dull, insensate. You lack intelligence or quickness of apprehension. Your grotesque mind raging in jealousy of our beauty. And you are shellless. Your flesh is naked, open to every speck of hurt and calamity. You must live in a world of constant and terrible pain. I do my little, laboriously carrying filth from the sacred, poisonous, reeking wells. I try to introduce disease into your food. And yet, creature, I am not without pity for you. If you intended no harm to me, surely I would intend no harm to you. Creature, can you not see that you are out of scale with our world? This world of magnificence, these vertical trees and mountains, this great gift of creation which is designed for and owned by me and my kind. Can you not see this regularity, the lines of this good earth, these black and white tiles? Do you believe that all of this arose by chance? Creature, is your deformity a punishment for some rebellion against the beneficence that made me and my kind so beautiful and so good? Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to welcome to the stage Arthur Lanch from SA.
Can't see a damn thing. Hi, good afternoon, and I'd just like to thank Michael Reynolds for allowing me this spot. Got a couple of pieces for you. I've got a Czech piece for you to start off with, because that's my background. Meow. This is a piece about Václav Havel. One fine sunny day, they will put the shells back into the cannons, the uniforms back in the cellars, and the knives back into the drawers. One small funny day, they will put the stones back on the ground. Elect a playwright president, allow him to ride a small red scooter just about anywhere. Well, 1 out of 6. Not bad. This is one for my mother. Passed away just recently. It's called Tame Siberian Tigers. My mother could tame Siberian tigers and really make them earn their stripes. She would teach penguin choirs to sing colour harmonies. And there was always time for another story and tattoo, a bamboo tune, a samurai soul riverboat. She corrected the street directory for the whole wide world. My mother, who could tame Siberian tigers, push those old reel-to-reels in several languages and not be a good little secretary, but rhymed instead, stack another bookshelf, fit in a crossword or 3, run a quick drawing workshop before tea, gringos, dingoes, fishes, dishes, really make them earn their stripes. Then rewrite that scene with the two opposing armies, mention satellites and mythology all in one, patch Hansel's pants and darn Goliath's socks. But the Philistines want red noodles for dinner. They've been promised to teach penguin choirs to sing colour harmonies. Now the Spartans are beatboxing backstage someplace, and Jonah's playing solitaire and there's no sign of Hamlet. Just make some more petals for Esther. Rocks for David. That whale's picketing the Japanese brewery. There's always room for another story, like that one about the very last grandmother on earth. Or how there was a bunyip living in our bathtub, and now she has a bus ticket to the moon one way. She sends my regrets to Hans Christian Andersen, and I'll tattoo a bamboo tune to a samurai soul riverboat. For now it's been raining here and the trees are all flowering. They swim in the wind. There's petals everywhere, just like my mother, who could tame Siberian tigers.
If you choose to text while driving,
you could ruin lives.
someone else's, your family's, or your own,
Choose not to instead.
the right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
Every minute. Every hour.
Every mother and father.
Every sister and brother.
Every son and every daughter. Everyone you see.
Everyone you cheer.
Everyone you watch. And everyone you hear. Everyone you meet.
Everyone you know.
Everyone you love.
Everyone is affected.
Reach out and get connected.
Each week on MELfeed Video, join us for Northern Access Television's general interest chat show, NAT Chat. Each episode features interesting and informative interviews from people of all walks of life. Weekly topics include community groups, religious topics, and professional people covering many different subject areas. That's NAT Chat every Monday night at 8 p.m. here on MELfeed Video. Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV.
Well, everything's coming up roses here this week on Living It Loud. We're at the International Flower Show. These guys have been working so hard over the week to get the floor plans ready for this show. Now we're just going to see a bit of a time lapse, the before and after effect of what went on in this little garden spot. theme going on here.
It's
a bit fishy.
It is a bit fishy. It's a, I suppose, a make-believe courtyard for a seafood production facility that we sort of invented the people and invented the facility and wanted to do a sort of out there, modern, yet sort of semi-traditional.
You haven't used a lot of plants in this one.
No, not a lot, but there's the ones that we have used, I think are used quite well, because the idea is that it's supposed to be evocative of the coastline around their original home in South Australia, where their families have long been part of the fishing community.
How long did it take you to do this then?
What, to build the thing?
Build and set up?
Yeah, about 5 days.
We saw you building, running around mad. We got a shot of the before shot. Have a look at this. Time lapse, fast speed. And this is the end result. How much would it cost?
What to do in someone's garden?
Yeah. Well, how much did you spend on this?
15,000 to 20,000.
20,000.
And then you've got the trout heads, the fountains, and all the materials and building the thing, and the time involved.
The labour is probably a lot of the expense too with all this.
Well, it's certainly, a proportion of it, like 50% of it.
But hopefully it sort of captured people's imagination and made them smile, which I think is
It is fun and quirky, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a bit out there.
So are you here next year then for something new?
Oh, we'll see how we go.
Excuse me. I purchased this bulb and it's not working. I plugged it in and turned the switch on and it's not lighting up.
It's bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. What would you like?
Well, I need a 50 watt bulb.
50 watt?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we've got a pack of 50 over there somewhere.
Okay, over there. Another man who's in the gnome.
Dressed as a gnome, yes.
Yes. Now we're cross-seedling here, are we?
Cross-seedling?
Or whatever. How does it work?
It's a brand new pack designed to make gardening a little bit easier. What we've done is replace the old punnet system, and we've designed a system that you can simply lift the plant out without damaging the roots. Because you don't damage the roots, your plant's going to kick on and grow straight away.
So how fast does technology change in the garden with reinventing things and simplifying things? And
well, if you can imagine the old seedling trays that you used to buy, the wooden trays, they were around up to about 20 years ago, and then they were replaced by the plastic punnets. Those plastic punnets have been around since then, and this is the latest thing to come into gardening since those punnets were invented. But where the seedling punnets aren't recyclable, these you can place in the recycling. You can reuse the pack, so it's all designed to give you a little bit more value for money and look after our environment as well.
We're in one of the garden expos, and about 10 days before the event, this is what this little theme looked like. It's taken over just a little over a week to get ready, and the preparation is something from this result at the end, which is incredible. You won the award.
Sure did, yep.
Now tell us about the whole theme here.
It's based on Shakespearean masterpiece A Midsummer Night's Dream. Fleming's asked students to design a garden based around the heading of a living masterpiece, so I picked Shakespeare.
Now, how long have you been doing the garden thing?
The garden thing, I guess I've done it ever since I owned my own place.
So you're born with a green thumb.
Bit of a green thumb. The mother's a bit crazy. She's into the gardening too.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so it's a bit of a
Runs in the family.
thing.
Now, I noticed you use a mixture of grasses there, which are quite effective.
Yes. They the contour lines are symbolic within the play, the contrast, the bizarre contrasts that occur within the play. So the mound represents those bizarre contrasts, as opposed to with the mirror mosaic, the randomness.
That would have taken forever to do.
What?
The mirror?
The mirror.
Yeah.
I have a fantastic friend who's a mosaic artist.
Oh, there you go.
She came in and did the work, and it took her 2 days.
So the idea of the competition as well is you don't actually set it up, a team does it for you, so everybody's able to come in and actually do this.
Everybody kept saying, yours is easy. Don't worry, yours is easy.
Yeah.
We'll fit yours in. I was the last one to finish. Midnight.
I'd say it'd be the river. Absolutely.
Was cleaning the river.
Cleaning the river, and you've been cleaning it again, I noticed. Well, good luck. So, how much credibility do you have for winning now? Do you get offers from nurseries, or where does it go from here?
I've had an offer of some mentoring from one of the landscape architect companies, which I'm thrilled about. That's something I was wanting.
Is that the direction you want to go to? Yeah.
Direction, yeah. And they seem to think there's a bit of raw talent there that needs tapping. So
we'll see you on a backyard blitz show then.
Sure will.
Sure will.
Sure will.
Definitely.
See that all of these tropicals, natives and ornamental grasses down the end are planted in. And they make a wide range of potting mixes, and you can pop over and see all of their products just behind me over here.
You're the face really of this whole thing today,
Thank you very much. I feel very flattered. Cheers.
Now you've done 3 gardens. Tell us about the stages here. You're very different gardens indeed.
They are, yeah. I've started off, last year I did a couple of different styles, but I feel that it's probably a little better from a viewer's point of view to actually look at 3 completely different styles, and that is, I've got a Balinese one, I've got a fern garden that sits just behind here, which is a completely natural setting, like a sort of a rainforest type situation.
It is the total rainforest, mist and all.
Yeah, mist and all, exactly. So don't bring your lenses through there, it'll all fog up. And then right down the end we've got a sculpture garden, which is sort of a large contemporary style feature.
Very vastly different. Now, to set up these is taking you, roughly about 10 days to do here?
10 days, 40 guys. Very different to backyard blitz, I might add.
Now, how realistic is backyard? 2 days to do these gardens.
Look at these calluses, mate.
Pretty big.
Yeah, we start at 5:30 in the morning, and sometimes we're not finished until 1 o'clock in the morning. So, the next day, which is a lot of work. We pack in 4 days worth of work into 2 days, which is how we get it all done, really.
Do you think people expect that nowadays? They want a garden in 2 days?
Yeah, look, I think television, really, at the end of the day, we're highly organised and we've got a large team behind us which sort of helps make all that happen. But obviously, if you're a DIY guy at home, take your time and do it properly. Yeah, it might take you months, but it'll be certainly worth it. And anything's good is worth waiting for.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, enjoy. You've got to speak now. You're talking about the landscape. I don't get it.
Landscape design.
I haven't got it.
Plants. I'm educated.
This I get it. Yeah, educated.
It'll be good soon. Trust me.
False alarm. Some people have gotten prepared. You've actually dressed for the occasion, like myself.
Not intentionally.
No? You come here with a flower on your... You didn't even know.
Didn't even think about it.
What brings you here? You've got a bit of leaf there as well.
Oh, just the gardens. I think they're gorgeous.
Yeah, you're a bit of a green thumb yourself?
Love to be.
What's your favourite?
My favourite.
You're a rose woman or a pansy? Don't know.
I don't know. I just love them all.
What's with the leaf? You play leaves?
My grandson, no. My grandson souvenired that.
Oh, okay. Pulling apart all the displays. Yeah. Do you recommend coming here?
Oh, very much. Yeah. Very much.
Have you bought anything?
Well, we've just started. We're looking at the moment.
So there's always something to do in the garden, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, and don't forget to water it.
No.
Gonna do a wet t-shirt thing going on here. Now, each exhibitor here has a little stand which they make their own design and landscape, and they're all judged. So every stand here might win a prize, and as you can see, this sculpture presents won a silver prize for its creation. I'm still trying to work it out. I don't get it. This one's called Pushing Up Daisies, which we'll all end up doing one day, 6 feet under.
Any acid-loving plant in your garden will love this stuff. Camellias, rhododendrons, daphnes, any of your annual sort of plantings.
I'll wake up and smell the roses. We'll be back after the break.
Yes, there we go. It's a delicate one.
So, you're the kind of bloke that does the mowing the lawn on a Sunday?
Definitely not.
Why not?
I got gardener to do that.
You got the gardener to do that?
That's his job.
What a cop-out! Is that the trend these days?
Yep.
Why? What's the gardener do?
Everything.
You've landscaped or?
Oh, yeah, done all that.
Done all that?
We've been 20 years where we are.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So how important is the garden to the home?
Oh, yeah. Adds a few bob to it.
It does?
Keep an eye on that bloke over there.
And also a place just to sit and relax?
Yeah, it's good.
So what about it you think of today, which has been pretty minimalistic?
I've been here 5 minutes, so I don't
Yeah,
really
5 minutes. Oh, you better get out there and have a look around. Out there in the garden plotting away, or?
I am a keen gardener.
Yeah. So what have you got? Are you just the pot plant sort of person, or?
No, full-on suburban backyard.
Suburban backyard. Now what's in a suburban backyard? Roses?
Yep, a bit of everything.
Hydrangeas?
No hydrangeas, no. I'm very water conscious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what's your favourite flower?
Oh, definitely roses.
Roses. Well, there you go. How many roses are out there?
In this selection here?
Or in general?
I really don't know in that sense, but we have 45 that we've brought in from overseas. Taken us 2.5 years to get them through customs.
Wow.
And now they're coming on the market, the Delbard range.
And price-wise, the roses?
If you go for a standard, a bush rose like this, or a climbing rose, $29.95.
Okay.
And that's at the nurseries who sell it. And these things that they call standards can anywhere from $50 to $100, depending how big and wonderful they are, you know.
Now, can you mix your roses? Obviously, coming into a garden with roses, you're going to smell that perfume scent coming through. Is it good to mix, or would you keep it to a standard?
Well, some people are traditionalists, you know, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and others just like to mix and match. I do at home myself.
Do you have a combination of smells and scents and stuff like that?
Yeah, because these roses, they actually, their senses come through during the day. They don't just hit you with that smell at the start. It'll change as the day moves on, and we have what's called a.
So you can do a Chanel No. 5 scent though by mixing up a few, or
very close to it. This is a Grimaldi, which is used in perfume. In
that's
France.
divine.
They actually break that down, and that's called the scent triangle, and that's how it starts from the.
So you got a bit of lemon.
And then it moves
okay,
up.
lemon, head of heart, rose. Very nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Melt them down, pop puree, and away we go.
Now, people ask us about green.
I've been playing with that all day.
We'll chop that up. Okay, this is a green succulent stem as compared with the other one.
This pavilion here is about all the students putting together little themes, and what's the theme going on behind us here?
The theme was a living masterpiece for each floor garden, and everyone's interpreted it differently. For me, the living masterpiece, I thought of images of like very natural landscapes are often painted, and so I chose a landscape that was special to me and then represented it in a sort of modern cubist way, sort of bring both extremes of art together in one garden.
How long did it take you to do this? I mean, obviously setting up, I was here earlier 10 days, and have a look at this as what it looked like prior to this. It was quite a mess. But obviously there's a lot more work than just setting it up as well. It's probably taken you, what, 10 days to prepare this?
Organising it since November. And we've been here for about a week. Building, yeah.
Is it a lot of pressure setting up such a fantasy in just such a short time?
It is. It's a huge amount of pressure, but it's a huge amount of fun too, because it's so exciting and see it come together and see your drawing come to life, and it's really great. It was quite important in the design for me to have a lot of textures to provide the interest. I wanted it to be quite simple, but then the interest with the texture.
And your choice of plants?
The plants is Magnolia grandiflora greenback, and I just wanted quite a green look again, but with the textural interest in the leaves.
A lot of foliage and a lot of... it is very textured.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And what's your backyard look like?
Not like this.
No? Why not?
I'm too busy.
Too busy.
It's ideal for going into concrete patios or balconies, confined spaces, because you don't need any flooring joists. That's the stuff we bolted on, the plastic. So you lay one down like this, you come along with the next one, and they just... Oops, I must have a rock in it. You just have it like this, and then they just... And just been utilising them too much. Okay, now take the weight of a car, and then you just click them all together, and that took us about 25 minutes.
What a bunch of flowers! You couldn't resist. What have you got?
The chrysanthemums, I think.
Is this for yourself?
No, take back to work, to friends at work.
Oh, aren't you sweet? You couldn't resist. Are you a flower person yourself? Or?
Yeah, I like flowers. Enjoy it. Well, I wouldn't be here otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. And what have you learnt today? Oh, just bang coming through.
Oh, I guess just enjoy the colour of it all.
And what about the aromas? Do you choose a flower for the smell or?
No, the colour.
The colour.
Definitely the colour.
Definitely. And your favourite colour?
Yellow.
Yellow at the moment. Always a favourite?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, enjoy. Ah, you pansies! Go off! The thing about now, there's a lot of water features. There's the interflora stage, which are showing you how to do a bit of flower arranging. If you're going to say it, you say it with flowers.
Of course you do, always.
Interflora.
Interflora, yeah.
Globally?
Globally, all the way around the world.
Now, how many flowers would you give away on average? It's a multi-million-dollar business, really, isn't it?
It is a multi-million-dollar business, but you got to remember. I mean, interflora is associated around, like as far as I'm concerned, I'm in suburban Melbourne.
Yep.
And the fact is that we all deal with our local community, and we, through that point of view, we tend to give away to the charities like the kindergartens, the schools, or whatever.
Yep.
So we get, there's a lot of work that interflora do behind the scenes that people don't recognise.
Who are your best clients? Weddings, funerals? Oh, look, birthdays, Mother's Days?
Best clients would probably be weddings.
Yep.
But bereavements are always sad. There's plenty of situations in bereavements. No, I would say weddings.
And what's the most popular wedding flower?
Oh, probably I'd have to say the rose.
Rose. Mm. Nothing like the old rose. complete outdoor setting here. How much would it cost to do this?
Oh, look, this would be about 60 to 70,000.
Wow.
Yes, it's quite an expensive enterprise, but you know, it looks
the theme?
beautiful. The theme, I'd say, very much a minimalist theme here. Very classical, smooth lines.
That's the thing at the moment. It's all that minimalistic, no plants, no flowers sort of thing going on.
We've got the plants here. We do have the plants, as you can see up the back there, and even along the side, they're very voluptuous. They do contrast very much so with the minimalist.
Now, the guys were taking, we'll just have a quick shot of the guys setting up here. It was pretty bland and taken a while to get together. How many days in total?
To put this
up? To put this up.
Oh, well, the whole organisational process takes several months,
Yep.
but the exact time it takes to put it up, I think it was about 10 days or something.
10 days.
So
it's quite amazing now. I think now people are starting to think that they can have a backyard done in 2 days because of all these shows.
blitz and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. and it's sort of getting possible now to do that, is it?
Well, you know, TV, I sometimes wonder.
Well,
I mean,
this
do
is 10
they
days,
really do
yeah.
it in that amount of time?
Well,
I mean,
they work a long
it's still-
hours.
but at the same time also, you know, a garden like this you would not see on Backyard Blitz.
No.
You know, they sort of go for the...
And the designer of this?
Jack Merlot.
Jack Merlot.
Yes, he's
Very
doing
known
well.
in the
Yes,
garden
yes,
world.
he is.
Or is it just...
The stone comes from different parts of Asia and South Africa, and then we do a lot of the designs here ourselves, and more than half of what we do is tailor-made designs for architects and
So you're just
landscape
designing the pieces and not the actual yard
designing
itself?
the
Or
pieces, and we help some retailers with their displays,
Yeah.
but basically we deal with landscape architects and designers, and they do the designing for their clients.
So how much does it cost for a water feature?
Well,
ranging from...
A simple stone feature, a prominent one, such as the 90-centimetre pyramid over here, is around about $1,900 plus installation, but that's solid hand-beaten marble that's been carved, and comes complete with a pump, a light, and a base stone and a tray.
So illuminating at night.
It's fabulous. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Get into a water feature.
Oh, everything beautiful, even inside the cut flowers and everything.
You're a real flower person?
Yeah. Yes.
Have you smelt many today?
Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Oh, they know you can eat them.
You can eat them?
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. You're a real fan. She even eats the flowers. Now, you've designed this landscape behind us. What inspired you? It's pretty industrious, really, isn't it?
It is. It's quite severe, really. It's September 11th, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all different symbolism in all of the ground covers and the trees and the plantings to symbolise all the things that I saw when the Twin Towers went down. Yeah, that was quite a moment in my life, and that affected me. And I think masterpieces are produced in their time and affect people in different ways. And yeah.
So how long has it taken you to put this together?
Well, actually, we had a construction team come in, and they took a week and a half.
A week and a half.
Yeah.
So you just designed it and you've said, okay, you guys do it, or...?
We come in for the last 2 days and we do a little bit of direction.
Yeah. So how you found the reaction of what's here today?
Well, it's interesting. People walk by and go, oh, I don't know about those beams in the middle of the garden. And it's not until it's actually explained and they suddenly go, oh, yeah, that's what it all means. So they look at the garden at face value and it's a bit of a shock. And then once it's explained, they go, yeah, I can see where the meaning is.
Get active, get social, get on a roll. For more info, visit skateaustralia.org.au.
Okay, Sarah, I'm going to order some pathology tests to see how everything's going.
Half the Australian population had a pathology test last year. That's you or someone you love. 100 tests are performed every minute, delivering vital medical information. From the moment you are born, your healthcare depends on pathology tests. 70% of medical decisions rely on information from pathology tests. Pathology is the engine room of healthcare. One small sample can reveal millions of insights all about you. Pathologists are your doctor's doctor. 25,000 people work to provide doctors with the answers they need to treat you. Australian pathology is world class. We may never meet you, but we see each of you as part of our family. Every minute, 23 Australians find out more about their health.
Good news, Sarah, the results show that everything's okay.
Pathology provides peace of mind.
I rely on Australian pathology.
Sign up online to support Australian pathology.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV. Live streamed from Echuca each week, it's MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Michael.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, MELfeed Video, a different sort of TV.
They say there's a chance I could die in a car crash, maybe even from heart disease, maybe even skin cancer.
I could die in a work-related accident, or I could die in a fight.
The fact is, the biggest cause of death for men in my age group is suicide.
Please don't let this happen to me.
You can do something. Lifeline believes that suicide is mostly preventable. Help us save lives. Find out what you can do at lifeline.org.au.
MELfeed Video is about to close operations for tonight, but we'll be back with you next Monday evening. In the meantime, here is a selection of programs that will be seen on our next scheduled web stream. You're welcome to visit our website at MELfeed.video for further details of this project. Until next time, from all of us here at MELfeed Video, we wish you a very good night.